Hello, I'm Robin Vincent and welcome to Molten Modular. Today we are looking at the Vermona random rhythm. What's the random rhythm? Well, it's a randomized trigger sequencer clock divider kind of pattern creating drum machine, gate machine, monster LED flickering swing box. Vermona were kind enough to lend this to me a couple of months ago, and since then it's sort of invaded and spread its way through my rack, so it pretty much runs the whole show. Initially I thought, oh cool, it's sort of like a drum machine, and in order to try it out I went out and bought the 2 HP hat because I only had the Pico drums, which gives me 2 drum sounds, and I felt I needed something more. But little did I know that what the random rhythm does is that it spreads itself everywhere. It's not just about drums. Initially drums, yes, okay, but slowly but surely, it sticks its little prongs into everything. It triggers everything, gates, everything. It moves clocks around the place. It generates patterns of rhythms in all sorts of interesting and unusual places. In the bit I was just messing with a moment ago, the only other source of stuff was the varigate, which was kicking out a sequence. Everything else was run by the random rhythm, and it is just a great big ball of fun. So let me pull everything out and attempt to demonstrate it to you. Now I should point out at this point that I'm not a rhythm expert, I'm not a master of drum machinery, and so you just have to take what I do as kind of a hint of what it's possible to achieve with this little device. And hopefully from my fumblings and my patchings and my occasional noise making, you can extrapolate from that the true potential of this little unit. Yeah, right, let's get going. So there it is, the random rhythm from Vermona. They have a distinct style. It's kind of this brown, slightly sparkly front panel with these strangely cream and sort of vintagey or slightly medical knobs. It looks slightly out of place in the more common black and silver that you have on most modules, but not in a disconcerting way. It sits there quite uniquely. It stands out. It doesn't look like anything else in your rack. But at the same time, it's not shouting at you. It's sitting there sort of subtly unique. And the feel and the touch of it and the quality of the faceplate are all excellent. I was initially a bit perturbed by the width of the thing. It seemed like twice as much as it needed to be. I only really needed half of it because I only wanted to run, 3 or 4 drum sounds, and so 4 channels seem to be plenty. But what you discover as you use it is that there's never enough of it. I could do with 2 of these, 3 of these if I had a larger rack, because you can do so much with all these outputs that you just want to keep plugging them into more stuff. But let's cover the basics. You do have 2 things which are essentially the same. Both of them are a 4-channel trigger sequencer. The first channel gives you quarter notes, the second channel gives you 1/8 notes, third channel gives you 16th notes, fourth channel gives you triplets. That's the idea. It's pattern creation. You're not programming individual steps. You are working with patterns. And what it does brilliantly is bring in elements of randomization to generate these patterns for you on the fly. Right in the middle of your performance. Bam, off you go, another pattern. And it's both completely risky and completely thrilling because you're never quite sure entirely what you're going to get. So let's demonstrate that very quickly. I'm going to take the quarter note and I'm going to stick it into a kick drum over here. Now what happens when I push the slider up is it increases the frequency, intensity, probability of that trigger triggering. There you go. If I push it all the way to the top, it will sound on every 4th note on the bar. 2, 3, 4. Put it down, it becomes less frequent until it doesn't sound at all. So let's follow this along then and stick a snare on the 8th note. put that into second channel on my Pico drums. See, simple, easy drum patterns without me having to program, in an 808 style thing or in a varigate style gate sequencer sort of thing. All I got to do is push these up and it's playing already. So what should I use 16ths for? I wonder. So that's very simple, very easy. I've now got a bit of a drum machine going on. And if I don't really like the pattern, here's the genius. You hit the dice button. Hit the dice button, Vermona rolls a dice, and you come up with a slightly different pattern. Hit the dice again. Are you getting it? Are you getting it? Simple, yeah? But this is just the beginning of it. A couple of other simple things you've got in there. You've got an offbeat button. Now what that does is makes each hit essentially exclusive. So rather than everything hitting at the same time, everything will only hit when something else hasn't hit. Does that make sense? Let me show you the difference that makes. So it's a really good way of calming down a pattern, just with the hit of a button rather than changing the pattern. It just detensifies it. Detensifies it, is that a word? De-intensifies? I don't know. But you've also got triplets as well. You can use triplets if you want to stick triplets perhaps into the hi-hat instead. Sounds slightly weird. I haven't found a really satisfying use for the triplet yet. Particularly, what I tend to use it for is on the sequencer output here, which is another bit of their special sauce, which is the mix output. So once you've got all this stuff going, you can combine all of those triggers into one uber trigger in order to trigger something else. Say the basimilus. So we take the sequencer out down here, and that takes everything that's firing and puts it into something else. Let's just take that for the moment. And so in this, if I put it all down, you get the combination of everything. So I get my kick, then I get my 8th note coming in as well, then my 16th, and it's at this point that that triplet starts to make, sort of, it starts to penetrate, starts to have a kind of an interest to it. And of course, then when you roll the dice, it affects that too. And the more intense you make the other bits, the more intense the main output, yeah? You know, you could just play with that all day. The other standout thing on the front panel, of course, is the swing knob, which is a beautiful thing. Just introduces this just glorious lilt, particularly at a slightly lower tempo. So there you go, the random rhythm. But again, that's not all, because you can use these for all sorts of things. I mean, I use it for a bit of percussion, sure, but also more often I use it to trigger envelopes and introduce rhythm into other places. I'm going to take a sequence out of the variegate, plug that in to the STO, output of the STO into Bales. And I'm going to gate the STO with maths. Of course, with maths. But in order to trigger maths, I'm going to take the sequencer out of the second side of channel 2, section 2 of the Vermona. So the sequencer out is going to take the combination of all of these. So I can stick one in like that. Now I don't have a clock relationship established between the variegate and the random rhythm, so I'm going to take the quarter note output of there and use that as a clock in on the variegate. Maybe the 8th note. I'm going to take that sequence and molt it into the black VCO up there. Take the output of that, plug that into my VCA. Woo. And I will envelope that from the maths using something else. Maybe using the quarter note. So now, using the random rhythm, I've got sort of clock control over the variegate. I can slow that down and increase the intensity. And I've got that over the bassimilus, I've got it over the drums, I've got it over the envelopes which are firing on both the black VCO and the STO to create all sorts of stuff going on. And then if I just want to change it, I hit the dice buttons. I'll take something else to trigger an envelope. I'll stick that envelope into there. you go. There's something. You just play and it becomes a performance, and it becomes something which you could use in a live situation where you're just bringing stuff in and taking stuff out. You're increasing the intensity, you are dropping it away, and that is exactly what the random rhythm excels at. It excels at the touchy-feeliness of it. The fact that you can just roll the dice and it's going to repatternize. And that might give you something awesome. It might also give you something, which makes you have to work and then change it a little bit, and then it draws you in, and then you hit the button again and you then find something again. Maybe. There's an element of risk, certainly, but that's no bad thing. I mean, every time I turn on the Bassimilus, there's an element of risk because I have no idea what I'm doing with that fella, and so it could sound awesome or it might just sound terrible. But that's good. You need that in performance. You need the surprise, you need the irregularity, you need something to come along which you just either you start tuning into or you have to fix. And I find that very exciting. Now it does have a couple of other tricks up its sleeve. It has this menu system which I don't particularly enjoy, but never mind. And that allows you to edit a couple of things. You can change it into 3/4 time, for instance, which is interesting. You can also change the output of each of the different channels to see whether they're randomizable or not. So it could just be straight. You could use it as a straight 4 to the floor drum machine where everything is on or everything is off. And that way, I guess you can use it as a clock divider, much simpler and more precisely. Because when you're using it as a clock for other bits, other things react a little bit weirdly because you're suddenly taking ticks out and putting ticks in. And the variegate in particular stumbles about all over the place in a really delicious way. But you can turn that off if you just want regular clock division. It also has this reset in patch socket here, and that allows you to do two things. It can generate another pattern when it receives a voltage of some kind. It then will generate a new pattern, or it will mute all the outputs. So you can have this situation where you're turning stuff on and off, which is quite interesting. I mean, I've got this set up at the moment for side 1 to mute and side 2 to generate another pattern on the receiving of a square wave. Now, putting in a square wave at the right speed, I found that a bit troublesome, but never mind. Let's just take one and put it in and see what happens. So I've got a square wave here. Turn this back up. Put that into the reset in. Obviously my square wave isn't in time with the rest of the system. I did work out a way to do that, well, I can't remember what it is, but it's just as a demonstration of turning stuff on and off and resetting this pattern over here. So the pattern is also being changed. But I could also go into edit mode, go across to mute all, turn that off, go across to restart dice, turn that on, and then with a bit of luck, I don't know, it should now reset the pattern every time the square wave works. So what I'm actually getting at this point is a kind of continuously varying pattern, which is really nice. Let's play with that a bit. It's just superb. So, you know, you've got a lot of value in the random rhythm because it just goes everywhere and does everything. And it's a sort of module that you can just simply sit and play with. Rather than trying to write a piece, trying to create a pattern, oh my goodness, where am I going to put these off? So am I really just going to put a kick and then a snare, then a kick and then a snare? It doesn't take you to that place. You can make that happen if you want, but you get tired of that really quick. And what you find yourself doing is fiddling about with your fingers and creating pattern upon pattern upon pattern and developing those. And then that takes you into a different place for a different idea, for a different run through something else. Then suddenly I'm playing with a bassimilus like I know what I'm doing, which is odd because I certainly don't. But it's the random rhythm which has created that situation because it's pulsing through all sorts of different things. It inspires, it takes you to places, it reminds you of things. It's just great. It's fabulous. And I had no idea to do this sort of things. I was after a drum machine. I just wanted a drum machine because that's the thing that was missing from my rack. And it's inspired me to get the 2HP hat, which is great. It's a great little thing. It also inspired me to get the bassimilus because I needed something else to run percussively in my rig. And that seemed to do the job, although I don't understand any of it. Working with the random rhythm, it generates these rhythms, these patterns, this stuff that's going on that just makes you want to continue to play and perform and go and fiddle and swing or not swing or reset or not reset. It's great. Whatever patch I build, this is doing something. I either get it clocked in or sometimes I use it as the clock if I want to create other things which has a bit more of a bizarre timing thing going on. But it's always there, clocking something, doing something, triggering something. And if it wasn't there, what the heck would I be doing? Well, if it wasn't there, I'd probably have to understand the Variegate 4 Plus a lot more than I do. But fantastic, what a machine. I mean, I've not seen a whole lot of people out there talking about it or using it. And I think it's perhaps because on the surface, it seems like, it's a bit of a pattern generator. And that's all right, pattern generators are useful, but I've probably got one in the disting that I could use. But that's not it. It's the fingering of it which is important. It's these sliders that are important. It's the resetting and the dicing and the randomization that produces not massively radical changes, but good, subtle, useful changes that you can instantly play with and instantly respond to. You can build up the intensity and then just drip it away. Yeah, I use it in some ways like I would a mixer, like I would be muting out different channels in a mixer. I don't need to do that. I can just pull down one of those and that stops the trigger firing. So I can control my percussion, I can control the rhythm of various synth lines and stuff going on through the rack. It's a great thing. It's a great thing. I've been completely bowled over by it. From my initially thinking, it's a bit of a drum machine. Oh, okay, that works okay. Yeah, I'm not sure how interesting this is going to be, into getting into the manual, which is a little bit of a struggle. I was reading through it and not really understanding what it was trying to say because they put a lot of emphasis on the musicality of it, the offbeat thing, the thing where different beats hit and different beats lie, and that's fine, that's good. But in many ways, the kind of the sort of the technical nature of the manual made it harder for me to actually start using it because I thought I was missing something. I thought there were some secret hidden bits and pieces that I was trying to find because the manual seemed to be so in depth about all these different bits, when actually all you need to do is fiddle and play and it becomes obvious and it becomes evident as to what's going on. This resetting thing, I've just discovered that today. So that's really exciting. The fact that this is now constantly resetting and re-dicing is brilliant. That's given it, to me, yet another whole new load of life. That's just ace. So I think that's enough to say on that. I think it's fabulous. I'm just going to play a little bit more and see how that goes. And in the meantime, you go and make some tunes.